Hello and welcome to the Bracken Outdoors Podcast, the podcast where we deconstruct the skills, attitudes and knowledge you need to build a living in the great outdoors. So, I've got another solo show for you today, here in September, and we'll talk a little bit about the value of bushcraft skills for forest school leaders. So this is something that's been bouncing around in my head for some time. I think the forest school course as it is, so the level 3 that you take to get you started in forest school, is a good kind of entry-level course. It kind of introduces you to a wide variety of different skills, different bits of knowledge, particularly around child-led learning, so on, introduces you to the whole framework that forest school is, and it's clearly designed as just that, an introduction, with the idea that first of all you go away and once you've done your introductory weeks you go away and you complete your portfolio, and then you gain more knowledge and you explore more through that. There's certain things that you need to meet, certain criteria, and then you move on from that and then you are out into the wide world as a qualified level 3 practitioner, and the idea is that you then continue to learn and continue to grow, continue to develop. But something that I've seen in forest schools is that a lot of forest school leaders never feel able to fully make that jump into really using a lot of the bushcraft skills. They might do a little bit with fire lighting, bits and pieces, toast some marshmallows. They might do a little bit of knot tying. They might do a bit of knife work. The children are very lucky. But in general, it seems very focused around just the crafts and just the play. Which is, those are, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, with either of those things, with crafts and play. I think they are extremely valuable parts of child development, particularly in early childhood and onwards. The ability to be able to play and to be creative and to follow their curiosity and to really let the outdoors and the woodlands teach them is essential. I think that I've always said that forest school is a great antidote to all of the problems in the school system. All of the things that we talk about, that there's just very little child-centered learning, there's very little engagement, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of didactic teaching and so on, whereas forest schools is supposed to be freer, more child-led, so on. But I think when you're using an outdoor space and when you're using a woodland leader, we're working as a woodland leader, there are certain things that you are missing out on if you don't kind of build that skill set in bushcraft. And for the purposes of this chat here, I'm going to say bushcraft is the using of more traditional skills and resources in interacting with the woodlands. And I think, they really have value. And I'm a bit biased here. I come from a background of bushcraft. I almost simultaneously got into teaching and bushcraft at the same time, but my real drive through all of this, my personal development, has been very much centered around bushcraft, because that's what I love to do. And I think also that it's me bringing in a more unique approach to bushcraft, because there's a big movement to kind of bring more women into bushcraft and everything else, and I think there needs to be a movement the other way, bringing men into forest school, because forest school is very much female dominated, and that's not saying there's anything wrong with that, but children in general will benefit more from having a balance of people that they meet in their life. And as we get into later on, there are definite advantages to having these skills, or being a man in certain situations, being a woman in others. There's different things to take on in different places. So, number one thing that I think number one reason why I think you should introduce more bushcraft skills into your sessions is the ability to take learning further. So there's a couple of components to this. So at a basic level, let's say you go on a walk through a park. Okay, pretend you know nothing about plants, about anything, about nature. You just take a walk from your plants. You see greenery on your left, you see greenery on your right. You're just walking. You're probably more concerned about your destination, and maybe appreciating that it's natural. It feels good, because we know that nature has, just looking at nature has elements of well-being, and improves our health, improves our mental health, and everything else. We know that. But yeah, you're just walking through and you go, okay, yeah, nice trees. Okay, onwards. I've got places to go, things to do, people to see. Great. Then, now this is something we talk about pretty often in interviews. Most people get into something like foraging. Like, really, really simple. Like, go forage some blackberries, go forage some elderberries. They're both just coming into the end of the season now. There's things like wood sorrel, there's all sorts. And suddenly you have another layer of depth to your learning there. You are no longer just walking through the woods, you're walking through a corridor of foraging opportunities. At a very basic level, you can do what I do most often. So I'm a snack forager. I'm not really into making forage preparations and using it in cooking and everything else. I just like seeing something on my way past and going, "Ooh, I'll have a munch of that. I'll grab a bit of sorrel, I'll pick a blackberry. I'll just wander through and I'll grab a little bit here, grab a little bit there, and just munch on it as I go." I'm not a salad person. I'm unashamedly happier with a nice steak or some proper vegetables. So I'm just a picking forager. But there's another layer of depth that I don't tend to interact with. It's okay. Well, what if I took these home and if I dried this particular leaf? Like, I have actually been experimenting a bit. So I've got some rose bay willow herbs leaves. I heard they can be fermented. So I've fermented them, I've dried them, and I'm going to see what they're like in a tea. You can make like rosehip syrup, you can make elderberry, elderflower champagne. There's all sorts of things you can do with the forage goods that goes beyond just munching them on the spot. And I would say that gives you more depth. You are interacting more fully with it. You start looking out for it. Seasons. When you pull that bottle or jar or whatever out of your fridge or cupboard or wherever, and you sample a bit of that, and it takes you back to the time when you first picked it and that season where everything was vibrant and green, and now it's the middle of winter and everything's cold and wet. That's really nice. It's a really nice feeling. As a depth, you're learning more, you're interacting more. As we've said multiple times before, as you add depth, you add more, you increase the benefits. Whether it's the mental benefits, the physical benefits, as soon as you increase depth, you get improvements in all of it. So, forest school as it normally is, if you're just focusing on, okay, a very shallow skill level, you're only just skimming the surface of what you can achieve, because it's moving from, okay, well, we're going to make a shelter with string, and I've brought in this string and we're going to tie it up with there, to, hey, can we make string from what we can find here? Can we use those nettles, those brambles, that lime, whatever, can we use that to make string? Yeah, that will add a whole new level that children can then go to, that people can learn. So we're adding depth. Another way we can add kind of depth to the learning, or use it to move learning further, is by motivating those who might not be as interested in the other skills. So we want forest school to be inclusive. That's a big thing, and it should be a big thing. Forest school is about including people and about valuing the individual. If you have a very one-dimensional skill set, and I'll admit I need to work a whole lot on singing and stories and crafts and all of that, because there's children that I meet that will benefit from that. And I think it's much more important if you are the only forest school or outdoor instructor they have access to. Because a lot of the homemade I work with, they can go to different sessions at different times of the week, and they can get that balance. But if your only ability to access forest school is through the school, and you get that one day a week, and it's always something that doesn't quite hit what you really want to do, then you're missing out. You're missing out on some engagement there with that particular child, those children. And by building bushcraft skills, you can then begin to include more children, and you can also start working up age ranges. Most forest schools are built around early years or very young children. This is mainly because the national curriculum for schools, whatever, allows for a certain amount of leeway, a certain amount of play. It's actually in the curriculum that children should play and be experiencing, and they should be out and doing. It's only later on when most of the requirements are, can you do the maths, English, science, all based in the classroom or based on academic work, that it becomes a lot harder for schools to justify this. And it is as well, because if what you're doing is basically just taking an art session outdoors, then, well, yeah, that's okay. But if you really want a school to set aside time, you need to be able to engage children that are older, and you need to be able to push them even further, be able to build more into it. And a great way to do that is those bushcraft skills, because you start learning about the natural environment, you start thinking about the physical aspects of it, you start learning about the sciences behind it, because it is required. Bushcraft skills require a knowledge of sciences. You can't light a fire unless you have an understanding of the requirements for fire, how ignition works, sizing the size of fuel. I mean, Rupert Locke, who I had an interview with a while back, he's fantastic with this. He's brought science alive through bushcraft, and it's really valuable. But the deeper you go, the more you can access these skills, and the more you can engage those older children, the ones that are kind of just, especially the teenagers. I had a teenager in a recent session. He was really in a session where he was far too old for the rest of the group, and I didn't know that he was going to be that old when he booked, and it was just straight out, okay, yeah, you're 5 years older than anyone else here. It's probably not the best thing for you. And he was, I'm going to say, bored and disengaged, because I hadn't planned it for him to be there. Secondly, the children were dealing with working at a completely different level. To engage him, what did I do? I brought out the knives, brought out the whittling tools, and we started working. He ended up leaving with a whole butter knife, everything else. I was engaged for that. But yes, if you want to engage the older children, you're going to have to level up your skills. you're going to have to provide more practical skills in my mind. There's still value in the craft, still value in the play, and I think all people all through the ages, every age range should play some. I know as adults we get distracted from it, and we think we're too busy for it, but it's really vitally important. But this angle where we bring bushcraft skills in alongside is fantastic for bringing more into their lives and encouraging more children to engage with the sessions. So yeah, that's number one. That's probably the biggest reason why you should bring bushcraft into forest school. Bushcraft skills, working with bushcraft skills, is to add that depth and breadth and level of engagement. Number two is confidence. You may only be working with little ones. You may do a little bit of firelighting here and there, but having that confidence that you are several steps ahead of the children. If you know how to light a fire using a flint and steel, you're totally okay with fire steel. You know what you're doing. You know how to help them. You know what the best way is. You know what the limitations of fire are. You know the limitations of materials. The more you learn, the more confidence you gain in yourself and in your abilities. The more you learn. If you don't really know your trees and then you get asked by a child, what's this? And you have to kind of bring in that whole, okay, let's go learn together. That's a good way of dealing with, but you're going to feel that inside. You're going to go, I feel like I should know this. And by then being able to go, oh, I know what that tree is. And you go, oh, it's the birch tree. We can use the birch bark for firelighting. Shall we have a go at that together? And suddenly you've gone back to the previous point, extended their learning, but you also feel confident in yourself. So confidence with lighting fires. Other bit that a lot of forest school leaders won't do very much knife and tool work, because I think they lack the confidence to be able to work safely there. They haven't done enough of it themselves to go, okay, I know what I'm doing several steps ahead, so I can bring it back down and I can meet them at their level and work with them. And that's what we're really looking for, is looking for that depth of knowledge in the practitioner, that confidence that brings. The confidence, even if it doesn't apply directly to working with the children. Say you have a limited time out there and you only have a bit of time to set up, and it's raining today and you want to get a tarpaulin up. If you know your knots, if you're confident and able with those bushcraft skills to be able to put up a shelter quickly and efficiently, then the rest of it goes so much better. Because you've got that confidence, you know what you're doing, you know what needs to happen with the tarp, and you can get it done, and then you can have a dry space for the children and a dry space for yourself, and you can then go on with the session. Having that ability builds massive amounts of confidence. So that's a really big one. Do take on bushcraft skills for yourself. Bushcraft is amazing for building mental health, positive mental health, good confidence, and resilience. And we recognize that because we're working with children. We know that all of this builds, and yet at the same time we're also not willing to take some time for ourselves to extend our knowledge, to challenge ourselves, to engage with something at a deeper level, to learn more. We need to take time for ourselves and learn more so that we can come and bring it back to the children. We don't want to be that person that doesn't have 5 years experience but only has 1 year's experience repeated 5 times. We want to be able to offer something new and exciting to keep our lives interesting and exciting. So use it to build confidence through bushcraft skills. Third reason why I think bushcraft skills are so valuable for forest school leaders, scout leaders, whatever it is, woodland leaders alike, is I think it creates this, a reduced reliance on the unsustainable trappings of modern life. That's a complicated way of saying it. I'll try and break it down a bit more. So when we, as I was talking about earlier, when we learn how to make natural cordage, suddenly we have an option that doesn't involve man-made acrylic wools that are full of plastics that, if left in the environment, will persist for many hundreds of years. We instead have something that's biodegradable, that's useful, and that draws us back to nature. If we are able to craft tent stakes out of wood, we again don't need to buy in these metal ones. If we can create our own resources and begin to use the outdoor stuff for crafts, so we don't need to bring in felt tips and so on, if we can then use certain berries and roots and leaves to achieve dyes or to make paints. We don't need to necessarily have a big plastic table out there if we can construct one out of some wood, out of branches that we've gathered. We can, and in this we are being the good role model for the children that are working with us and for the people that are working with us. We're going, okay, there is actually a better way that connects us back to the places where we are and the environment, the direct natural environment. There's ways to use it positively to benefit everyone. And it reduces our reliance. We stop thinking. I think once you deepen into this bushcraft mindset, because at its core, if you go on a bushcraft course, they will basically try, and on a good bushcraft course, they will try and strip away all of the things that you're bringing in. Like Mors Kahansky said, the more you know, the less you carry. So one of the most quoted bushcraft sayings out there. And in a way, it is true, and that's what a good course, good practitioners would end up doing is seeing what can be stripped away. What can be stripped away? What sort of simplicity can we create? Do we need to bring a tripod with us, or can we make one out of hazel rods? Do we need a grill, or can we use green sticks? Do we need a shelter, or can we make our own? Do we need to have X, or can we make it out of Y? This brings you into this mindset of using the natural resources, going, okay, how can I? And we stop thinking in terms of paper and poster paints, and we start thinking in terms of leaves and branches and mud and clay and all the things we can find on our site, the natural resources. And you start getting your eye in and you start noticing that pile of stumps that you've just passed, and you pick up a couple of those so you don't have to take out the plastic chairs anymore. You see the seed heads and you go, cool, that means I won't need cotton wool. It's all about kind of building that knowledge of the environment and then putting it into practice, and I think we come out better and more sustainable for doing that. And this is a big question, big problem of our times, is the environmental issues out there. And I think we can do by bringing and learning these bushcraft skills, we can actually be a force for good and begin to spiderweb out those interactions. So we're the center, and then the actions that we take can go in any direction. You never know whose mind you've affected, who you've inspired, what sort of seed you've planted. You don't know until later on. And you might never know, but you do affect people in your life. And now I have to think about, well, okay, I have a responsibility. If I'm affecting people, I have a responsibility to them. If I'm changing their mind on something, if I'm sending them a certain direction, I need to know I'm sending them in the right direction. Is it towards a consumerist society, or is it towards a more natural, sustainable society? That's something worth thinking about. So there we go. Top 3 reasons why bushcraft skills are essential for forest, in my opinion, essential for forest school leaders. It's the depth and breadth of learning. It's the confidence it gives you, as the inherent sustainability that it creates. And the big thing to remember is that bushcraft isn't just for middle-aged men having a beer in the woods. Bushcraft is a different way of interacting with our landscape. As for everyone, and there are more and more resources out there for you if you want to learn bushcraft skills. Humbly, one of them is my YouTube channel. I break down skills simply. There's something you'd like to learn and it's not on there, let me know and I'll put it on there. There's organisations like the Institute of Outdoor Learning's Bushcraft Professional Practice Group, which is a mouthful. IOL Bushcraft PPG. Have a search for that. Brilliant Facebook group on there. Fantastic professional people, many of whom are both bushcraft instructors and forest school leaders, and they're bringing the two together, and they're bringing their skill set. Like forest school leaders, fantastic at teaching and linking learning and learning theories and everything else. Bushcraft instructors, bushcraft and outdoor leaders, amazing at all the practical skills, learning to make the most of your environment. If we can bring those two skill sets together, I think we have something amazing. So there's organisations like that. There's other people out there for like scouts. There's bush scouts. There's people and resources now, and it's easier to get into than it has been before, and more inclusive, I think. So if you really want to get into bushcraft skills, reach out to one of these communities. Reach out to me if you'd like, if you think I could help, and just grab a book. There's some excellent books. I mean, the latest one I got recently got John Ryder's Woodcraft, Guide to Using Trees for Woodcraft and Bushcraft. Fantastic little book. It'll introduce you to other concepts that you wouldn't normally do. Have a page through something like Ramier's Outdoor Survival Handbook. That's a really handy one. So you can just pick and choose. You can just go, okay, that sounds quite good. This one in particular is broken down. The Ramier's book is broken down into seasons. So you go, okay, what season is it now, and what can we do? There's plenty of options out there. So dive in, see what you can learn, do it for yourself as well as for the learners. With that, I'm going to wrap it all up, and thank you for listening. I mean, I really do appreciate each and every one of you who listens to these episodes. If you have any feedback for me, let me know at info@brackenoutdoors.com, or if it's on YouTube, drop a comment down below. And with that, I'll say, remember, make the most of every day, and I will see you next time. Over and out.